Today, we welcome America's Pastor Max Lucado to the Christian Book Edified podcast. Edified equips busy pastors with concise, accessible, and engaging wisdom as they labor in the daily trenches of ministry. Edified seeks to help you strive to excel for the edification of the church in accordance with 1 Corinthians 12:14. At Edified and Christian Book, we are here to help build up ministry leaders like you and encourage your soul for greater service. Max Lucado is known for combining poetic storytelling and biblical, accessible teaching with the heart of a pastor. His trade books all begin as a sermon series at Oak Hills Church, and his sermons all begin with him asking himself this question: what can I say on Sunday that will still matter on Monday? He has been dubbed America's Pastor by Christianity Today, the best preacher in America by Reader's Digest, and the Ted Lasso of pastors by the Dallas Morning News. Max Lucado has penned more than 43 unique non-fiction trade books that also stand alongside dozens and dozens of best-selling children's books, gift books, Bible studies, commentaries, and collections. His newest book, What Happens Next, was published in August of 2024. He has 153 titles under his name. His books have been published in 56 languages worldwide, and they regularly appear on bestseller lists, including the New York Times, Publishers Weekly, and USA Today. With more than 150 million products in print, Pastor Max has been the recipient of the 2021 ECBA Pinnacle Award for his outstanding contribution to the Christian publishing industry. He tirelessly gives words of hope and help. Max has been married to his bride, Denalyn, since 1981, now for 43 years. They have 3 grown daughters, 3 sons-in-laws, 4 grandchildren, and a dog named Andy. Welcome, Pastor Max Lucado. We are so happy to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my honor.
Great.
My honor.
So, Pastor Max, your most recent title, What Happens Next, helps the body of Christ to understand that God has an ultimate purpose that overarches history. So the garden in Genesis was turned upside down, and God will ultimately have his garden. So in chapter 13 of your book, it's titled, God Will Have His Garden. You give readers 2 millennium messages. First, we cannot underestimate the depravity of humanity. And second, we cannot overestimate God's sovereignty. So how, because our edified audience are young pastors, so how can young pastors bring these themes into preaching hope and building up the body of Christ?
That's a great question. It's a great question. And thank you for doing this, by the way. Thank you. It's really a treat to be with you. It's not fashionable, hasn't been in most of my ministry, to talk about sin. But we have to. But we have to explain the human condition, that at its core there is a proclivity that we have to turn away from God, and that depravity, that choice of mankind to turn away from our Creator is ultimately what is caused every disaster, right? Every problem, every struggle that we have. And so I think as pastors, we don't have to convince people that there is sin. People know it. We just need to call it what it is. And at the same time, talk about the great grace of Christ. Just this past weekend, for a variety of reasons, I preached a sermon on the topic of pornography. And I was, as I was preparing the message, and pastors can empathize with this, when do you need to be direct, and when do you need to be comforting, when do you need to convict, and when do you need to come. So many times when I'm preaching, I'm thinking, okay, I need to get the people who are resistant to this message in one room and those who are wanting healing in another room. Can't do that. You've got both of them in the same room. And so I find myself quite often saying something like what you just read. We can't underestimate the depravity of humanity, but nor can we overestimate the goodness of God. I was saying that just this past weekend, because many of those who do battle pornography, they don't want to battle. They're looking for hope. And so we live in this tension as pastors, trying to communicate simultaneously the, I guess you call it the 1-2 punch, that we've made a mess of our lives, but God masters in turning our messes into his message.
Thank you for being such a voice in Christian leadership that graciously speaks truth and love, because pastors need to speak to sin and yet with compassion and hope and healing through Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, I hope I have. I don't know. I'm sure it's hard to keep that balance, but it is a tension.
Many of your books over the course of your history focus on hope and encouragement. So what personal experiences of your own have shaped your passion for these themes?
Another great question. So when I first entered ministry, a friend gave me a book written. It was basically Charles Spurgeon's lessons to his students. And he had already read the book and had highlighted some wonderful passages. And I recall just flipping through it, reading what he had highlighted. And there was a quote that Spurgeon gave to his young students: "Preach like there's a broken heart on every pew." Now, many churches don't use pews anymore. We use chairs or living rooms, but the message is the same. And that is that there really is a broken heart on every pew. There's a distraught person in every corner of the room. And so speak to that person. Speak to that person. I am assuming when people come into our church building that they are there because they want to be. They have made a mental step. They've crossed over, and they're not the cynic. Now they may have questions and hard questions, but the fact that they're present says, "I want you to talk. I want to hear something." And so I don't really preach to the hard-hearted person. I'm assuming that hard-hearted person. Anyway, that's just an assumption I make. And that is the fact that they're there means that there's some softness to their heart. And so that's been a driving force for me in my work. Are there times when I could have been more convicting? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been a little more direct. But I just made that decision early on that I'm going to speak to people, assuming that they want to be healed, and they do. They do.
That's awesome. You mentioned the book by Charles Spurgeon, and we are here at Christian Book, and we love books.
Why would you love books?
Because books change lives.
That's right. That's right.
Well, what can I ask? What are you currently reading? What's on your nightstand? What's in your suitcase?
In my suitcase, my little travel bag here, David. I really love David Jeremiah. Look up to him. He has a just published book. In my backpack, I have the manuscript that he sent me. It's called The Golden Age or Golden Era. I think it's Golden Age. I could grab it right quick. It's the most popular level book that I've ever seen about the millennium, and I'm fascinated with end times. So I am reading that at the moment, and I am preaching a sermon series called "Think About What You Think About." that catchy?
Yes.
Sticky?
Yes, it is.
And so I'm reading books about how to manage our lives by managing our thoughts. Craig Rochelle has a great one, and I have finished that. There's a couple. I have a friend who's a neurosurgeon, and I reached out to him. He's also a Christian. And I said, do you have any books I could understand that would help me appreciate what neuroscience is telling us about the brain? Boy, most of it's over my head. A little bit of a pun there. Over my head and in my head. So I'm reading the Jeremiah book just for learning and inspiration. And also I'm reading these other books. I'm trying to recall some of the other books. Apparently my brain's not working.
It's okay. I think Dr. Carolyn Leaf has also done work in that area.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have.
Are there any books that come to mind that could be considered like 21st century Christian classics? Because we're familiar with, long-term believers are familiar with the Oswald Chambers. And so are there any contemporary voices that you can think of that are kind of tried and true? And I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah. No, you're putting me on the spot. So I think I have everything Charles Swindoll ever wrote.
Mm.
And Dr. Swindoll is, I believe, a picture of a scholarly pastor or creative pastor. He's pastored all these years, and so I get a lot of inspiration from him because I still pastor, and he writes. You can tell he enjoys the craft of writing. It's more than just gathering words to him. You can tell that he's worked that sentence or that paragraph. Early in my days, I read a lot of Frederick Buechner. Does that name ring a bell?
Not to me.
Yeah. Well, he's a bit irreverent, but never overly so. Just enough to kind of catch you and say, "Nah, did King David really talk that way?" He would just do a turn of a phrase, and so he's an entertaining writer. And then the other, as far as just clarity, who has helped me is John Stott, S-T-O-T. Well, what a good man! What a good man! When I was when I began writing children's books, I had a series of books published by Crossway. Crossway. And the best known is You Are Special, but it's a variety of books based on people who live in a wooden village. I'm going somewhere with this. So the publisher said, we're going to send you, this is one of those dream calls, we'd love to send you and your wife to a place called the Cotswolds, because your book reminds us of the Cotswolds in England. I said, well, okay, that's awesome. And so off we went. And I said, the only thing I want to do is visit All Souls Church, because at the time that's where Dr. Stott pastored. And I just never forget the place. Number one was packed. Number two was so multi-ethnic, looked like every skin hue imaginable. And then when Dr. Stott spoke, he never raised his voice, scarcely raised his hand, and yet the audience was just enraptured. Because he didn't need any gimmicks. He didn't use slide presentations like we do that, or PowerPoint. He just taught, and it was a carefully worded message out of Romans 8, and I'll just never forget it. Anyway, you got me off on a tangent.
No,
But so all pastors should read Basic Christianity by Dr. Stott. His commentary on Romans, maybe it's just my season of life, but I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and it just brought Romans to life.
that's a gem for the next generation of pastors.
It is, isn't it? I agree.
So I want to ask you, referring to the next generation of pastors, what are some of the significant challenges facing this generation of pastors? And what should they be cultivating to keep true to the gospel? Or how can they prepare now if they're mid-20s, mid-30s, maybe early 40s for longevity that honors the word and honors their calling?
Oh, boy. Those are all great questions. You sure you don't do this for a living? Because you do a really good job.
Thank you so much.
Okay. These thoughts might sound a bit random, but I'm just pulling together the words that have helped me. First, when I felt a calling on my heart or a desire in my heart to go into ministry, I went and visited with the pastor of the church I was attending at the age of 21 or 22. Wonderful preacher, wonderful man. And he said, Max, don't preach unless you have to. And I kind of gave him that same expression. But then I realized what he was saying is, if you don't have to, if it's not just a burden on, it's not going to really, but if you have to, if you find yourself just, okay, I just really have to do this. And so I think you begin right there, is if it's a calling, you just have to do it. You know, I met some of the pastors gathered at Christian Book today. And several of them are vocational pastors. And they just, their eyes sparkle when you talk to them about their work. And they have to do it. They don't do it for notoriety. Certainly don't do it for the added income. I'm assuming there is any. It's not much. But there's just something that tells him, okay, I need to start a church or help that church teach. So I would say there's nothing wrong if you don't have that call on your heart. That's fine. But if God calls, if you have to do it. And then the other thing that has really helped me is a man told me early on to learn two words. The first word is no, and the second word is thank you. Because he said, you'll have people wanting more of you than you have to give. You know, to visit, to come over to every dinner, to organize every committee. And he said, if you don't learn early that, okay, it's okay to say no. You know, I can't. I'm going to protect time for my family, protect time for my rest. So learn to say no. And then he said, I thought that other word was interesting. What do you mean by thank you? He said, well, when people come up and they say that was a good sermon, don't take it seriously. And then his follow-up, I can really remember this conversation. He said, most of what people say good about you, most of what people say bad about you is not true. So what he was saying is, most of the good things people say about you, most of the bad things people say to you or about you are just not, don't overdo it. You know, just say thank you. That was a great sermon. Don't let it go to your head. Just say thank you. Or when they're critical, just say, okay, I'll learn from it. Learn.
Well, Pastor Max Lucado, we are so grateful that you came today. Thank you for coming to Christian Book and being on the Edified Path podcast to help build us up, fill us up, and also fire us up. God bless you.
God bless you. Great job.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ralph. I've been a pastor for 26 years. And I've also been working at Christian Book for 26 years. And I'm thrilled to announce 2 brand new programs at Christian Book that will benefit churches immensely. First, our new Give Back program. It's free to join and earns your ministry 4% cash back on purchases at christianbook.com. Church staff and congregants all contribute to the quarterly check you will receive. Even more amazing, your district leadership can benefit with an additional 2% give back. Next, our new Authorship program offers both savings and convenience. Choose both the frequency and amount of church supplies, such as communion cups, to be shipped automatically to you at an additional 5% off our everyday low price. Just set it and forget it. Plus, for a limited time only, we'll send you an autographed copy of Max Lucado's most recent release, What Happens Next, as a free gift when you sign up for both programs. Be sure to act quickly while supplies last. Call 855-GO-CHURCH today to take advantage of these 2 new amazing programs at Christian Book.